Hi, everybody, and welcome to our third installment of Product Data Mastery. Today, we're going to talk about reducing returns to increase margin through better product data. With me today, I have Eli Cooley, and we're going to have a conversation regarding how exactly product data interfaces with any returns issues that you might be having. So I'm Dan O'Connor. I'm the practice director and enablement lead here at Early Information Science. And Eli, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Hi, I'm Eli Cooley. I'm a product information specialist. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now, working with retailers, distributors, and manufacturers to optimize product information, particularly for PIM and e-commerce.
Thanks for joining me today, Eli.
Yeah, good to be
So
here.
a couple of things before we get started. We are recording, and this recording will be available on the website so that you can send it to others who may not have been able to join. And the plan today is for this to go about 50 minutes, plus about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. So we'll try to get you out of here on time as much as possible today. Our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about early information science. We're going to talk about some return statistics, the real cost of product returns, how product data impacts those returns, and how to reduce those returns through better product data. Now, early information science has been around for about 30 years. We were founded in 1994 out of Boston, and we work with large retailers, manufacturers, and distributors, all types of businesses, to be able to help them be able to make their data more usable, make it more visible. We work with large clients, we work with small clients to be able to work on everything from product data management, customer management, knowledge management, operations management, all of those kinds of data elements. We want to help you organize that data. So let's talk about some return statistics. And why do customers actually return products? So the first reason is pretty simple. The wrong item gets shipped. And when we're talking about the wrong item gets shipped, there's reasons for that. And that's generally a lack of integration between the product information in a warehouse management system or an order management system. Now, you might think product data doesn't really play in here, but if you're not sending the right data from your PIM or from your ERP to those other systems, you have incongruities in how that data actually can be represented between systems. And Eli, I know we've talked about this a little bit, and maybe some stage setting should be done here about how we're not attempting to say this, what the product data is going to correct all issues with returns, but it can impact a portion of those, and it's going to vary by business type. So when we're talking about WMS and OMS integrations, what kind of data are we talking about that passes between those other different systems that can help with these product returns? Or what are the causes, I should actually say?
Yeah, so I think it's important to draw a distinction here between wrong item shipped and wrong item ordered. So I think we'll be talking about the wrong item being ordered due to potential issues with product information elsewhere. But here, this is actually the wrong item being shipped. This percentage is going to vary quite a bit depending on the organization. This might be something that's like less than 10% of returns. But this, as you said, Dan, this is the integration between the item that's being ordered based on information maybe that's coming out of a PIM or is authored in the e-commerce platform. It ultimately ties back to a product that's in ERP, in the warehouse management system, in the order management system. And when the information is different between what's in more of those, the ERP or the e-commerce or the PIM system is not linking back to the same information, or there's a gap in the information that's in ERP or the WMS, that's where these kinds of issues can occur. This could be around package quantities. It could be around just the identity of the item itself, the color of the item, the size of the item, and so this is where maybe probably less than 10%, but this is a healthy chunk of returns coming from just shipping the wrong item.
And there's a good distinction that you made there in wrong item shipped versus wrong item ordered, because there's differences in why those occur. And like you said, we're going to talk about that in another part here. But I want to get to what is the bulk of what we can handle from a product data perspective to influence returns. And that's inaccurate or missing product content. So that's data, that's images, that's collateral, that's elements of your data model from a compatibility or relationships management. And this really shows itself on the PDP when customers are making an order. They're making an order versus inaccurate information. So Eli, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean this really, as we have on the slide here, this really spans it spans images, descriptions, product specs, compatibility information. So any of these can contribute to a really a customer making an incorrect order based on the information that they're looking at being incorrect. And then also sometimes it has to do with information being missing. So if the information would have been there, maybe the customer could have ordered the right product, but because information is missing, they might accidentally order the wrong product. So there is a lot going on in here. And really, this is the area when we talk about reducing the number of returns by improving product information. This is the primary bucket here. We can't eliminate all returns. We might not even be able to eliminate half of returns, but where product information is going to impact the number of returns, this is really where we can do the most work. And it has to do with it's everything from item classification, the accuracy of specs, the accuracy and the quality of images, the accuracy and the presence of compatibility data, whether it's item relationships or specifications that point to compatibility factors. All of this can contribute to returns, and there's a lot there's a lot here. And most organizations that we work with do not have a good handle on the accuracy rates of these different pieces of information. So most organizations can't tell you what their item misclassification rate is. Every organization has a misclassification rate, but most organizations can't tell you what it is. There's a huge difference between a 1% misclassification rate, which sounds, is actually pretty good, and a 3% misclassification rate, which is really bad. Most organizations don't know what that is. They don't know what percentage of their specification data is inaccurate. They don't understand what percentage of their compatibility data is inaccurate, or what percentage of their images are inaccurate. This takes it takes work in setting up these metrics and then actually quantifying them.
And I think there's another element to that missing part of it. It could be missing because somebody hasn't filled out or completed something, left images off or something like that. Then there's the element of missing where the attribute or the image type or the compatibility data isn't even attempted to be captured. And that's an important distinction as well, because if you don't even know for sure what you should be capturing from a data element perspective, that missing product content is more about the structure of how you're collecting the data than it is about a missing data element itself. I think that's important to be able to understand as well.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes it points back to the data model itself.
Yeah.
If you don't have the field to store the information, then it's going to be missing.
Yeah. So this is one that you and I talked about at length. It's product damage or not operational. And everybody thinks product damage is, okay, well, it got damaged during shipping. That's the shipping, whoever's doing the shipping, or it wasn't handled correctly, or it was defective out of the box. But there is a product data tie here. Can you explain that product data tie, Eli?
Yeah, this sometimes points back to the information being inaccurate or a confusion around the product information, which could explain some of the not operational. But this is a product that's not working. So they received the product, it's what they ordered, but for whatever reason, this product doesn't operate the way that the customer expected. Sometimes it has to do, and we're putting a lot into this bucket, but it's the product is damaged, that the product is for any other reason not operational, even though they got the product that they ordered and then it's what they intended to order. Where some of this can point back to elements of product information that are considered more warehouse management or ERP. You have here wrong box size. We could also have incorrect data around packaging requirements. The size of the item could cause it to go into the wrong box. Or product information could cause the item to be stored in stacked in the wrong way, or during shipping it could also be stored in the wrong temperature environment. So there are product information inaccuracies can contribute. It's not everything. Sometimes things just get damaged, but a portion of this can sometimes be remedied with better product information, more on the warehouse side and on the supply chain side than on the kind of the marketing information or PIM information.
So another one that we talked about is the item arrives later or is no longer needed. And this is interesting because a lot of times this could be showrooming. This could just be, that's an emergency item that a B2B company orders from two different places to see which is going to come first. There's lots of reasons why this can occur. Can you give more color to that as well, Eli?
Yeah, I think there's maybe a couple primary things going on here. So the first might once again have to do with inaccurate information around shipping. So if I think the item is going to arrive within 24 hours and it gets there in 48 hours, if it arrives late, I might no longer need it. And so this is around accuracy on delivery times. Now that's something sometimes we can do things to improve that information. So if our deliveries are late, a percentage of those are going to be returned because the item is no longer needed. Another piece of this is that sometimes customers will order from two sources because they need something so bad. They'll order it from two places, and they will, whoever gets it there first, they're going to return the one that gets there second. So, how much can we really do about that? Customers placing redundant orders. It does happen, and there's less that we can do around that. Maybe some things around policies, but really the piece that we can control is accuracy in shipping times and delivery times.
And then the last one that we're going to bring up is about buyer's remorse, customer ordering errors. This is where they actually just order the wrong thing, and fraud, which actually fraud makes up a large percentage, an outsized percentage from what people would expect. We've seen where the fraud elements are actually becoming more and more prevalent, and they're less controllable by product data, but we're going to later on give you some ideas on how exactly you can use product data to be able to identify and slow down your fraud rates. So now just a couple of return statistics that we've looked up, and Eli and I talked about this before. There's actually varying statistics based off of the year, based off of the sources, based off of the industry, based off of the category. But when you look at apparel, has upwards of a 21% return rate. Consumer electronics is over 12%. Sports and outdoor equipment is at 9%. DIY and garden products are at 7%. Those are fairly large rates, and they're growing. So when we look at how B2B is also not immune from this, 18% of B2C online orders are returned. Now, these numbers tend to vary by source, but this is a composite average. But 16% of B2B online orders are returned, and that is growing. And 33% of BB online orders have at least one error in them. That's an interesting statistic that you found, Eli. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an important thing to understand, is that as more orders go online, one of the consequences of that is that depends on the organization. It might be 1.5 times, it might be 3 times, might even be higher than that. But you do have a higher return rate on online orders, and it's one of we think of online orders being good for the distributor, good for the retailer, good for the manufacturer. People tend, we like online orders, and we see a trend going in that direction. But there are more returns. Really, it does depend on the organization. It's important to underscore that, but we don't see many organizations where the return rate is less for online orders. It's usually going to be more. We said we have a 3 times return rate on average. It's depending on the organization. It might be a 1x. It might be 1.5x. It might be 4x. But you're going to see more returns with online orders, and so you have to have a strategy around that.
And I think that 33% of orders have at least one error is important, because when you're ordering as somebody that is ordering for a business, the brand loyalty of you used to have the salesperson coming in and selling you the products and then delivering them. Those days are long since gone. Most companies are trying to get into B2B online ordering. But if you have an error in a third of your orders and a purchasing department is making hundreds of orders every single week, that adds up to a lot of resource time that's being spent in attempting to resolve order errors that could be, again, they're picking the wrong product because an image isn't present or the title doesn't exactly match. The compatibility that they thought was there just isn't there because there wasn't good compatibility data. There's a lot of reasons for this, but that's a third of those orders that have to be rectified.
Right.
Another important, oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, it's important to think about this with B2B, especially when you have larger orders. So the more line items you have on an order, the more likely it is that that order somewhere is going to have an error. So this is important for B2B, where we see larger orders. Every line item on that order has the potential for a return.
Yeah, when we looked at the return rates themselves, the earliest projections for 2023 state that $145 million of product were returned for every $1 billion in sales. Now, again, this is going to vary by industry, but that's still 14.5% of everything sold is returned on average across all of online sales. And that adds up to a significant amount when you talk about a $3 trillion industry. Now, I'm going to go off the screen share just for a couple of seconds because I think there's some important parts that Eli and I wanted to talk about this. One of them being, you can't solve all returns ever. There's just structurally going to be returns that occur no matter what. Okay. People will just buy something to test it and send it back. They never intended on keeping that. Trying to reduce those kinds of returns is impossible. There's also the fact that there's just going to be damage that's going to occur to products based off of everything that you could possibly do from a shipping perspective, all the way from the original manufacturer through to the customer. There's going to be things that are going to happen in that. What we're talking about today is not eliminating returns. We're talking about reducing returns. And that's a significant difference, because if you're trying to eliminate returns, you're trying to eliminate things that are structurally necessary for a business based off of the return policies to be able to continue to do business from a brand messaging perspective. Now, I think that's important because product data can play a role in this that is, we believe, outsized based off of keeping products in customers' hands is better than trying to process returns more efficiently. If you never have to take the product back, that is more effective than trying to find a way to be able to make that product return easier. And one of the things that we talked about, Eli, was that the easier a return policy is, the higher the return rate there also is. So do you want to talk just a little bit about return policies, how exactly using product data and return policies together, you can determine what is the best return policy for your business?
Yeah, it's some people are surprised by the statistics around return policies. So every organization has to set their own return policies, but it's important to understand that I'm just looking at some statistics here. Most shoppers do consult the returns page before a purchase. I have a statistic here that it's about 2/3. So about 2/3 of customers are consulting those return policies before they make, or at least they're aware of the return policies before they make a purchase. So it does factor into purchasing decisions. Another statistic here I have is that 57% of consumers will stop purchasing from a retailer if they have a a bad experience with returns, which usually is around a confusion around policies. So these do have a big impact on customer satisfaction, on customer relationships, so getting those policies right. On the one hand, you want to set policies that are going to decrease the amount of fraud and decrease customer returns. On the other hand, we want those policies to be, if those policies are too strict, they're actually going to stop the purchase before it happens. So we have to kind of balance that trade-off. Every organization is different here. Much different situation for instance, B2C apparel versus, industrial supply, B2B. So, one size does not fit all for policies, but these policies are important. Customers are aware of them, and problems when these policies do come into play, these can create customers will stop doing business with you if they have a bad experience with returns around those policies.
Perfect. So I'm going to share screen again, and I'm going to remind everybody that if you have questions, please feel free to put them up in the Q&A in the in the Zoom meeting. We'll approach those questions and answers at the end of this. But we want to talk about the real cost of returns. And there's a couple of pieces to this that we need to talk about. And first is that there's really two options to reduce the impact of returns. The first of those is better returns management, making your organization more efficient and reducing the cost of the return itself. And this could be everything from converting returns to exchanges rather than a pure return, to store credits. It could be reducing processing time. It could be organizational efficiency. But realize at the time that you're trying to make returns management more efficient, you've already incurred the cost because that product might come back in a way that's just not sellable again. You might have products that have to be disposed. You have to spend amount of capital on warehouse spacing to be able to process those returns, even for resources to find out what you're going to do with those returns. There's other costs that are involved in managing a return. The other way that you can do this is through avoiding returns, reducing the overall number of returns generated. This is through better product data, improved return policies, other things like this. This is important to be able to understand because most people just think, or most businesses just think, well, there's a shipping cost and then I have to pay somebody to be able to manage the return when it comes in. It goes far beyond that. And Eli, can you talk to some of the expenses involved in actually processing returns?
Yeah, well, there's a few metrics here that are important. So first of all, let's just, what's the percentage of items that are returned? Maybe it's 10%, maybe it's as high as 30%. Either way, somewhere in that ballpark, that's a lot of customer interactions that are involving a return. So it's whole, getting metrics around that. The nice thing that's here around returns is that it's a somewhat metrics rich environment. So we can track what percentage of it, we can actually get a handle on what percentage of items are returned. We can look at what percentage of those returns are converted to retained revenue. Or through an exchange or a coupon. So or store credit. So we can actually get metrics here, and we can benchmark and we can improve. Organizational efficiency. There's kind of a rule of thumb that a return takes about 15 minutes of time. Collectively for an organization to process a return. So if we can get a handle on the amount of actual time that's spent processing returns, we can start to reduce the amount of time. So reducing processing time through elements of automation, and also converting those returns into retained revenue. And the primary techniques there are exchanges, encouraging store credits versus just a pure return. So there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity to turn these things from costs into opportunities to form a better relationship with customers.
But again, avoiding the return should still be the primary mechanism for handling your customers, because every return is a potential for a bad experience. Okay. And when you've already had a sales experience that they've now looked at as there was something inferior in it, and then attach a bad returns experience, a lot of cost is going into managing the returns cost to be able to keep that brand experience valuable for that customer, to hopefully build a brand allegiance for that customer. But you still have a large percentage of returns that just end up being negative experiences or high cost to be able to avoid the negative experiences. There's also a capital outlay in this because all of a sudden the product that you've sold is no longer sold. There's a high percentage chance you're not going to be able to sell it for the same amount of money. You've got to store it and process it and figure out if you're going to put it on the shelf, if you're going to send it to a third-party refurbisher, if you're going to send it to a repackager, if you're going to dispose of it. Whatever the return policy is, by category of item or even by item, that's a lot of work to be able to maintain those. So being able to take a chunk, even if it's 20 or 30% of those returns, and turn it into a better experience that the customer never feels like they have to return the product in the first place, is obviously beneficial to reducing your return costs. That increases margin because every single product return that you can't sell for the exact same amount of money, and even if you can sell it for the same amount of money, still has costs associated with it that hurt margin across every single other product. And trying to keep those margins up should be done through avoiding the return as much as possible, as opposed to making the return more efficient. Now, one of the things that you brought up when we were talking about this is returns management systems, or RMP systems, are becoming a bigger deal. Can you explain somewhat of what you found on RMPs?
Yeah, when you think about the returns management platform, ecosystem, there are a few places where we see RMPs. You can have pure standalone RMPs. That's kind of on the left-hand side here. These are platforms that are exclusive. They're completely focused on returns. These might be more common with smaller retailers. This might tend to be more common with smaller B2C retailers and distributors. And these are systems that are entirely focused on returns management. If in the middle here we have post-purchase platforms, delivery management platforms, you'll see both of that terminology out there that have strong RMP components. So many of us might be working on an RMP platform that's just a component of one of these post-purchase platforms or delivery management platforms. And then on the right-hand side, here we have your RMP. Your experience with an RMP might actually be as a feature or a component of an ERP. So SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, they all have elements of returns management built into the system. So when we talk about returns management platforms, it's important to note that it might be any one of we might have a standalone RMP. It might be as an element of a post-purchase platform, or it might be as an element of our ERP. And the right-hand side here is going to be more common maybe for B2B. The left-hand side might be more common for B2C.
And I think it's important to note the reason that we're bringing up returns management platforms is because one of the recommendations we're going to make, and I realize this is jumping a little bit ahead, but is that you need to understand why you're getting returns, and returns management platform are part of the analytics suite to be able to determine why the returns are occurring in the first place. Because, for lack of a better term, customers lie. They want to get through the return as easy as possible. So if you give them 10 possible reasons, they're going to pick the reason that they feel is going to get them the largest return. If they say that it didn't meet their needs and there would be a restocking fee because it's electronics, or if it's a consumable, they're going to go to another choice. The returns management platforms can assist in the analytics to get to the next step about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to actually talk directly about how product data affects returns. And this is very important because we're going to go back to some of those reasons why customers return to be able to talk through this. So we talked earlier about wrong item shipped. This isn't the customer made a mistake. This is the shipper made the mistake. The business that sold it made a mistake. And the reasons for this happening could be that the warehouse just had confusion during picking that item. And there's reasons why that occurs, like titles to match box for the warehouse. This is as simple as making sure that when the warehouse is picking, they're not picking based off of an e-commerce title. They're picking off of what they should actually see on the stocking label or on the shelf or on the box itself to make sure they're getting the right product to reduce that return. So this is as simple as adding data points to be able to do this, and then integrating between source systems like PIM and ERP to your warehouse management system, so that that data that exists that says this is what the warehouse title will be is in conjunction with your other data to make sure that they match. You could be shipping the wrong quantity. You could have data onboarding issues. There's lots of reasons why the wrong item that could be shipped that deal with product data. Now, Eli, when we're talking about integrations between systems, why is that vital to what we're talking about from a shipping perspective?
Well, I think it's important to note here that we're now talking about how product data has an impact on wrong item shipped, and so I think there's two. I want to highlight two areas here. One is those oftentimes we'll see like a 40-character description in all caps. This is where product information can go wrong, and we have abbreviations. We have descriptions that are being truncated. These are the kinds of things that can cause confusion. And when you have your warehouse picking based on a 40-character, all caps, truncated description, and the customer is making a purchase decision based on, well, sometimes it's a beautiful, 60-character description where there's no abbreviations. That's, these kinds of incongruities can lead to the wrong item being picked. Another key area is in package quantities. So if it's not clear what the package quantity is, sometimes we can get customers that they get the right item, but they get too much of it, or they don't get enough of it. These are two, I think, two really key areas, and opportunities for improvement. So descriptions and package quantities here. I think when we talk about being able to reduce wrong item being shipped through product information, these are two key areas to consider.
And a lot of people are going to say, well, people pick by SKU, they don't pick by title. But there's a lot of elements of, is the product that is on that SKU tag on that shelf when they're scanning the shelf tag actually aligned with the SKU? And that's important from a product data perspective as well, because if the SKU in the PIM is different than the SKU in the WMS, and the PIM shows the data, ends up passing the data to the e-commerce platform that makes the sale, you can never pick the right item. So from an integrations perspective, it's very important to be able to understand that as well. The more connected your systems are, the less likely that your warehouse people are going to pick the wrong item or the wrong quantity of the item. There's also a data onboarding issue with this as well, where a lot of this is done manually, and attempting to automate more of that data onboarding, providing better portals for suppliers to be able to provide data, making sure that your data entry people are validating data instead of just copying and pasting data is an important element of this as well. Now, I want to move to the next one, because the next one is obviously directly related to this. And that's when there is accurate or missing product content. Now, when we look at inaccurate or poor titles and descriptions lead to customer confusion, that seems like a pretty simple fix, but it's not done often enough. Can you give a couple of examples where just simple, I have validating titles and descriptions or making sure that the specification data is correct can avoid returns?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about inaccurate product data leading to a poor purchase decision and a return, it's going to be it's bad descriptions, it's bad images, it's bad specs. And when do those occur? They tend to occur at the point of onboarding. Now, data does get updated after it's onboarded, and there are opportunities for things to go wrong as data is being updated, or missed opportunities to update information after it's been onboarded. But it's at that point of onboarding where that inaccurate product information kind of is forged, and so that's where most of our errors are occurring. It's at that point of onboarding. That's where the biggest problem is. In terms of all of these, we mentioned this before, but most organizations don't have a handle on what their accuracy rate is. So they know that they have some percentage of items are misclassified, but they have no idea what that percentage is. They know that some percentage of their images are inaccurate, but they have no idea what that percentage is. They tend to have a better handle on missing information. So they know how many of their items aren't classified, don't have an image, don't have a fill, you have a lower fill rate for a specific attribute or something like that. But what they don't understand is the inaccuracy picture. And given how important that is, you would think, more organizations would have a handle on this. This is part of a governance program, but it starts with having a handle on what the inaccuracy rates are. So that we can at least understand what are we dealing with here, and where, now we can start hunting for that inaccurate information once we understand what the percentages are and once we've benchmarked it.
And then I think the next piece of this, we start talking about images, and there's statistics out there that say that an item with no image is, an item with an image is 12 times as likely to sell as an item with no image. But image quality is important too, as well as having the wrong image attached can be very problematic. All of these can be solved through processes for validations and image approvals, but there's a metadata element to this as well. Better integrations with DAM to be able to pull in the metadata to be able to make sure that the image that's being represented both is of the quality that should be expected from the presentation level, but also matches the actual product that is being sold against. And we see this time after time where images are seen as, well, as long as I attach something and I have the 5 images that I want, that metadata isn't as important. That metadata is important to be able to make sure that that product is selling with the correct images, correct?
That's right. In order to enact and put these processes in place to govern images more effectively, we need more metadata. Now, there's a kind of a flip side to that, which is that the more metadata you have, the more you're signing up for managing. Because if you have a bunch of bad metadata, that could actually lead to more bad images. So when we talk about having more metadata, we're talking about having more metadata that's accurate and well structured. And I'll just point out that, you said, and I think there's variations on this statistic, but a product with an image is 12 times as likely to be purchased. Well, think about a product with an inaccurate image is how many times more likely to be returned. So there's a multiplier on returns when we talk about bad images, and that's an important one. That that's a really easy way to create returns, is having the wrong image on a product.
Right. And there's another one that I want to call out in this, and that's the standardized naming structures for images. We've both been involved in PIM implementations. I previously worked for a PIM platform vendor. And one of the hardest things to be able to do is to be able to get them to understand that it is much easier when you have a controlled naming structure to make sure that the right image is attached to the right product than when you just attempt to do that manually and errors occur either in color, size, quantity, whatever it happens to be, or just wrong product altogether. Standardized naming structure eliminates such a large percentage of the errors, because as long as they get the name right, the rest of the process from an automation perspective takes care of itself. When we go in and do a new PIM implementation or a PIM optimization that they don't have a standardized naming structure, there's a long time that can be spent just trying to get the images attached correctly versus renaming the images and letting the automated processes handle that. So I just wanted to call that out, because everybody thinks, well, it should be easy these days to be able to attach images to products. This is a huge point of failure just based off of the lack of standardized naming structures. And then another one,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, there's just so much metadata underneath the surface in DAMs that people, a lot of people don't appreciate. It's in terms of how many metadata fields there are on your assets. It's not always just the images. I just want to point out that it's also your data sheets and your instruction manuals and the naming it's the naming conventions and all those metadata fields that go on the assets. as a ballpark, there might be 30 metadata fields on an asset. And a lot of people don't realize how many metadata fields there are on these assets behind the scenes.
So I'm going to shift us down to lack of compatibility data. And I've dealt with this multiple times in my career where a lot of times it's the data isn't properly captured for compatibility. And that can be improved through data modeling. And I'm going to give an example here. Well, we worked with a company that sold snowblowers, and they had a ton of service parts. And before we came in and adjusted their data model, they were looking at service parts as they're just another SKU, and that became very confusing for them from a compatibility perspective. We went through and we changed the dynamic of their data model so that a SKU was a finished good versus a service part was a service part, and then built compatibility relationships that were less confusing. And it made it much easier for their customers to be able to actually shop for that correct service part. And a lot of the PIM tools out there have visual marketing ways of being able to take a breakdown sheet or a schematic and turn that into a parts linking representation. It's difficult to do that when your data model is incorrect and doesn't support the differences between these products. But there's also understanding the prioritization of relationships. Just understanding that if you have a service parts business, ignoring that business from a PIM or a data perspective is going to limit your success. It's also going to breed returns inside of that service division. And then just better schema design. There's attributes that come along with the difference between a finished good and a service part. And understanding how to properly market based off that data model is important. Without this compatibility data, customers will try to type in the part number that they believe is associated based off of their user manual instead of being guided to that right part. And you can't be guided to that right part without product data to be able to do so.
Yeah, when we talk about data modeling being part of the solution here, a lot of organizations are maybe a little behind on relationship data between SKUs and compatibility data between SKUs. But another problem is that it's kind of a one size fits all approach where we just mash all of these links between SKUs into one product relationship where we're using automation to identify links between SKUs and just kind of throwing a bunch of potential related products up on the screen on a PDP. These can lead to when customers think that these are compatible products, because you're presenting them as related products, these can lead to returns. So differentiate, figuring out exactly how to store the information optimally around replacement parts, compatible parts, and at least having a way to differentiate a compatible part versus just a related part. This goes back to the data model. The solution, the right answer is going to be a little bit different for each organization, but having the right data model in place is important here.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move us on to a couple of the other reasons that customers return products. And again, these are more tangential to product data. There's ways that you can use product data to be able to do analytics. So let's say product damaged or not operational. Generally, that ends up being a logistics issue. Now, it's a logistics issue from it was going to get damaged no matter what, and product data has no play in it. But it could be something as simple like we talked about earlier about making sure that the storage data that comes from a supplier or a vendor or whoever is manufacturing it is carried through all of these systems, the ERP, the PIM, the WMS, the order management system, so that you have one look at what that logistics data should be. So it goes on the right truck, in the right rack, with the right temperature controls, with the right delivery mechanisms, the right package handling, the right boxing and fill for around it, the air gas plastic wrap versus peanuts. Just all of those pieces should be common across all systems, and it generally relates to product data. And then just having better approval processes involved is important as well. Suppliers will send you the data that they have. Your approval processes should involve making sure that the logistics data is at least directionally correct or as correct as you can determine it, and validated so that your WMS using a scanning tool, a Cubiscan or something like that, pulling that data back into the PIM as a central source or into the ERP is important as well to be able to validate what the supplier is sending you. If you're looking at it from the supplier sends me the data, I'm going to ship it out with that exact same data, without doing any of those cross checks to be able to make sure it's correct, will lead to problems during the shipping process for damage or to the packaging or to the item itself. And then when we talk about the item arrives later is no longer needed, again, that's a logistics issue. Eli, you had some very good statements when we talked earlier about this.
Well, this is this comes down to accurate shipping times, and this is another. We're not going to be able to eliminate all of this, but the more accurate, it is legit. It's a very legitimate case when an item arrives late that you may no longer need it. And we also have the issue here of customers placing redundant orders, where there's essentially a race between two suppliers to get the item there first, and the one that gets there second is going to be returned. So, how much can you stop this behavior? Some of it goes back to potentially to policies. Some of it comes down, but a lot of it comes down to accuracy in shipping times. And if we're not able to accurately convey our shipping times, we're more likely to get returns when things arrive late.
And Amazon has pushed this with same day delivery to you're competing not just on the price, not just on the quality of the product, you're competing on the ability to get it there on time and not having that good shipping data to start with. If you know that something is not going to ship that day, and you have promised 1 day shipping, that's not just a return, that's a brand promise problem that will erode trust in your ability to be able to meet your requirements. And Amazon's seeing that right now based off of all the shipping issues that happened over the last couple of years. Prime shipping is no longer necessarily same day or next day or 2 day delivery. There's times that prime shipping might be 5 days just based off of the availability in your area and them being able to source the product correctly. So I think that it's important to be able to understand that although you can never stop a customer from ordering multiple products, the delivery of the product in the right time based off the data that you have available avoids the trust issue that causes that behavior in the first place.
Yeah, and this is important for B2B and B2C. Whether it's a repair part for production machinery or a dress for an important event. This is an important factor with B2B and B2C.
Yeah. So let's talk about the actual ways to reduce returns through better product data. And the first one that we want to be able to do is understand what exactly the size of the problem is in the first place, or the scope. And this changes by every business, by every type of business, by every assortment that you sell, by the width of assortment, by your return policies. But being able to understand truly why people return products, to be able to understand what your specific issue is in your returns area, to be able to develop the correct responses to it, is paramount to anything else that you can do. If you don't understand the problem, you can't solve the problem. Secondly, invest in a returns management platform. There's multiple benefits to it, but from a product data perspective, the analytics that you can get from a returns management platform helps you determine root cause. It's sort of complementary to number one. This will allow you to get to the point that you understand truly where your returns are coming from to be able to try to keep those products in customers' hands. We want to update your product taxonomy, your schema, and your data model to match your actual business requirements. And sometimes this is just as simple as a tune-up on any one of these elements. Sometimes you have to look at the technology that's actually housing this and find out if it has the capability to meet your business requirements. From an ERP perspective, a PIM perspective, from a CMS perspective, there is no one tool that is built for every single possible business scenario. And sometimes a PIM that is 5, 6, 7 years old that may be lagging in some of the features is more of the problem in being able to collect data than the taxonomy wishes that you have itself. If you can't implement the proper schema or taxonomy or data model, you're never going to get to where you want to be. You want to add business rules and data quality metrics and validations with your approval process so that you can understand how exactly you can get to the product data enrichment process that gets you the best quality data. And we talked about this, Eli, just earlier today. Those data quality metrics are very important, not just like you said from a missing perspective, but from validations on conditional attribution and being able to understand how to determine when something is inaccurate based off of previous experience in how inaccuracies have come up in your business. So look in your product data. So looking at the past to be able to determine how some of those issues are coming up allows you to build data quality metrics and business rules that increase the validity of the product data that's going through your enrichment process.
Yeah,
And
this
we
is.
talked about,
I think, Dan, it's just important. It's everywhere from controlled lists of values for attributes, conditional rules across different attributes. There's a lot underneath here. When we think about a typical PIM, you can there's hundreds of potential data quality rules that we can build, especially if we have the right data model.
and one of the things that we talked about was, should this be the product data enrichment process versus the governance process? And governance has to be a part of this. Data quality metrics are governance. Business rules are governance. Those have to be there. The choice of drop-down lists or enumerated lists are a good example of where governance should be. We chose the product data enrichment process because that is the process that develops the data that is going to be shown in whatever channels you sell in, but it's also part of the governance process that says when there is change, how am I going to manage change to make sure that I have the most efficient and accurate product data enrichment process that I can. Now, you also want to start automating. And the last webinar that we did was actually about AI automation and product data. This is important because AI can be scary, but done properly, AI can actually increase your speed to market, but it also tends to be more accurate because it does a better job of normalization. If somebody sees something that the attribute requires inches and they get a number in feet, well, you have to hope that they realize that there's a difference between those two, where AI can be programmed to automatically know those differences. So it's increasing the product data quality involves a lot of AI, not just for the sales perspective, but to make sure that that data quality is reducing the returns as well. And then this is a good one that you brought up today, Eli, about getting PDP user feedback on data quality. Could you explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, one of the, a typical, whether you're a retailer, or manufacturer, or distributor, you might have millions of data points when you start thinking about all the different attribute values you have for every item, and allowing users of your website to provide direct feedback when they identify inaccurate data is a really good way to at least create a channel, an inbound channel for data and correct data inaccuracies before they're exposed by a return. So whether it's an inaccurate image, an inaccurate specification, an inaccurate description, give users of your website the opportunity, an easy way to provide you with that feedback directly through your site. There are a lot of sites that do this well, and there are a lot of sites that most sites don't do this at all.
Yeah. So when we're talking about this, one of the elements you have to understand is if that user feedback is coming in your reviews, you've really failed that customer and a series of customers then on. Being proactive in this would hopefully be you're doing all of these things before the data ever appears. This is sort of reactive, but it's a proactive form of a reactive response, as opposed to waiting for the return to happen to be able to identify a problem, to be able to solve the problem. So from an EIS perspective, realize that we believe that this can be a people problem, a process problem, a data and content problem, and a systems and technology problem. And these are complementary to other issues your business might be having. But when you look at something like your returns, especially in the marketplace that we're in right now, in the economy that we're in right now, reducing the cost of returns by keeping products in the customer's hands, by investing in these pieces that are going to help with sales, that are going to help with marketing, that are going to help with logistics anyways, can be paid for just by the impact that it can have on returns. So when we're looking at this, we want to make sure that we have the right people, the right technology, the right processes, and the right ways to be able to develop data and content to be able to make sure that your product data practice is humming across the entire spectrum. And we do that through our design approach, which is we have to do the discovery to be able to find out what the actual problems are, because way too many times people deal in symptomology. We want to identify the problem, provide that gap analysis, provide you with quick wins, then give you a long-term roadmap to be able to get to where you want to be from a product data perspective. Whether it's based off of returns, whether it's based off of any number of other elements, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to be able to look at what's best both in the short term and the long term. Now, we've provided some additional readings material for when we post this webinar, so you can send it to other people. It includes links for things that we've talked about and additional elements that we've added to this. And if you have a returns problem or a product data problem or a knowledge management problem whatsoever, please feel free to contact us. We can set up meetings to be able to determine how we best can use our expertise in this space to address any product data or our organizational data problem that you may have, even if it's just determining what the size and scope of the problem is and separate it from the symptomology. So you can contact myself or you can contact Eli to be able to get more information to discuss what we've talked about today, or just to be able to determine what exactly is the next course of action you should take. So Eli, I'd like to thank you for jumping in with me today. I think it's been a very good conversation back and forth. Do you have any closing statements before we let everybody get back to their day?
No, thanks for having me here, Dan. And it's returns is often an overlooked or underrepresented topic when we talk about product information and operations, and it spans so many different areas of an organization. It's kind of a fascinating little topic, and I appreciate you having me here.
I appreciate you coming and talking with us. So next month, we'll have a new topic for the product data management webinars, but I'd like to thank everybody that came today. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Have a great day, everybody.
See you guys.